So Jacksonville and Trevor Lawrence have reached a mega deal, one of the biggest contracts in NFL history, not quite the biggest in NFL history, but at 55 million per year and 142 million dollars fully guaranteed, it's definitely in that top 3. And in short, for the 49ers and for Brock Purdy next season, if he continues at the trajectory that he's currently at, because he's been a better quarterback than Trevor Lawrence, and the difference is actually significant. Well, this means that Brock Purdy is still, as we predicted here a long time ago, he's still on pace to be a $60 million man in terms of APY, average per year, next season. But we could see how Trevor Lawrence ranks against the rest of the NFL right now. We're checking out over the cap, and on over the cap, we could see the ranks by average per year. And Lawrence is not on here yet, but at 55, he's going to be tied, as you can tell, with Joe Burrow ahead of Jared Goff. Now, Burrow's 55 million is a whole heck of a lot more loaded than Goff's 55 million. So then I always say, look at the fully guaranteed money. That matters more. So we'll sort by fully guaranteed money. Oh, we have a new leader in fully guaranteed money. It is Deshaun Watson, and we can actually look here. I know it's easier to read. Fully guaranteed money, Deshaun Watson at $230 million. That was an insane deal that the Cleveland Browns gave Deshaun Watson. Joe Burrow, number 2, so he leads in APY, tied now with Trevor Lawrence at 146.5. Lawrence is at $142 million in fully guaranteed money. Lamar Jackson and Justin Herbert round out the top 5. So we're going to come back to that in just a bit. But first, fully guaranteed money, that's money that the player would walk away with if he just if he got hurt, he'd make more money because that's injury guaranteed money. But if he got cut, that's the money that the player would walk away with. So that's what makes the Deshaun Watson contract so wild, is that they gave him $230 million fully guaranteed. If Trevor Lawrence is absolutely abysmal here for a season or two, something happens and they have to cut him, they're still going to owe him $142 million. That's what fully guaranteed money means. That is the scale that is most important when evaluating contracts. And this Lawrence deal is third on that list, and it's tied for first on the list of APY, which is average per year. We will see the details of the Lawrence deal in due time. But here's the key. Brock Purdy is better than Trevor Lawrence. Those of you watching this afternoon, you saw this. This is pass protection on the x-axis, efficiency on the y-axis. I think people need to wrap their heads around just how damn efficient Brock Purdy was this past season, and even the season before that. But I've got some more data for you on that front. But Purdy is historically good so far early in his NFL career. Efficiency head and shoulders above the rest of the league, behind a worse pass blocking grade than most of the league. That's why he's over here in this quadrant. It's pass blocking on the x-axis. The averages for the league are the dotted line. So if you are above the horizontal dotted line, you're more efficient than the average quarterback. So you could find Trevor Lawrence right here. Yes, he's more efficient than the average quarterback, but not by much. Slightly above average efficiency. Behind, yes, bad pass protection, but not as bad as the 49ers for Jacksonville. So Purdy, head and shoulders above Lawrence with worse pass protection. If we go to Ben Baldwin's site up here, then we can see the last 2 years. I have Mahomes highlighted, not Purdy. There, we fixed it. You can see the last 2 years of the EPA and the completion percentage composite, which measures efficiency and accuracy based on distance. And we have the rankings of the past 2 years of these quarterbacks. Brock Purdy leads the way by a fairly wide margin, 0.181. Mahomes, I just highlighted him. He's number 2. He's at 0.148. So it's Brock Purdy and everybody else. Trevor Lawrence is right down at number 15. Right behind Trevor Lawrence, even despite the really poor year that he had last season, it was a shortened year, is Jimmy Garoppolo. So, and to be nice to Trevor Lawrence, to be fair to Trevor Lawrence, I did not include his 2021 year under Urban Meyer, where they fired Urban Meyer. 49ers played the Jags that year. Lawrence would rank number 27 over his first 3 years in the league. Instead, he's number 15. Brock Purdy is number 1. Lawrence is not, it's not like he's short on weapons either. That Jacksonville team had Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Evan Engram. I mean, it's not like that they were devoid of talent there. And if you look at this, the good quarterbacks are at the top. Everybody agrees that Patrick Mahomes is a good, productive quarterback. Dak Prescott, a good, productive quarterback. Tagovailoa, I guess there's a little bit more debate on him, but Josh Allen, he's up there as well. So at this point, there's nobody credibly arguing that Brock Purdy is not a good quarterback. He's elite. He's at the top of the pack in every single stat that you look at. And objectively speaking, we need to forget about draft status. We need to forget about who's 6'4", 6'5". We need to look at what a player actually does. And there's a lot of fake smart people going around saying, oh, well, yeah, Trevor Lawrence, he's going to deserve more money than Brock Purdy. Why? They don't have any good justification as to why. The only argument that I hear is if Trevor Lawrence was on the 49ers, then he'd be better than Brock Purdy, even though every shred of evidence, performance evidence so far, suggests that Trevor Lawrence would not be better than Brock Purdy because he's been less accurate, he's been less mobile, he's been, I don't think that the arm strength and the arm accuracy downfield has been up to par. There's nothing that Trevor Lawrence actually does better than Brock Purdy. The only thing that has happened to him that has been better than Brock Purdy is that he was picked number 1 overall in 2021, and Purdy was picked number 262 in 2022. And people think that just by virtue of the scouting community thinking that Lawrence was going to be a better prospect, he would be a better player than Purdy. We've seen thousands and thousands of times in the NFL, the draft positioning does not necessarily equate to a better player in the league. So every objective measure has Brock Purdy as being significantly better and more productive than Trevor Lawrence. Therefore, when Purdy's up for a new contract next season, since he's been better by every single measure than Jared Goff and than Trevor Lawrence, he'll get a bigger contract than Jared Goff and Trevor Lawrence if Brock Purdy continues at the current pace that he's at. We could absolutely see a regression from Brock Purdy. He's been that damn good that a regression is possible. But even with a slight regression, he still have put together a better body of work than anybody that you've seen on this quarterback list. So takeaway 1 is that Purdy is still on track for $60 million per year. If you go back and you look at this sorting of the contracts on Over the Cap, we're at $55 million per year now. And I know I'm not a big APY guy, but it's a good way to illustrate the larger picture of these contracts. If we're at $55 million now, with a lot of QBs still aiming to sign between now and when Purdy is eligible next off season, that number is going to continue raising. I don't think anybody can credibly argue that Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback in football, yet he has number 1 money right now alongside Joe Burrow. So other quarterbacks who aren't the best, such as Jared Goff, are going to pop their way either into the top 5 or to number 1 like Lawrence did, and they can raise the level of number 1 from 55 million to 56, 57. It's a good bet that by the time that Purdy comes around, the number to hit will be 60 million, and there is a good chance that he'll be the first $60 million player and quarterback by extension, because that's how well he's playing. Obviously, there's a ton of pressure on Brock Purdy and the 49ers in this 2024 season to see if that does indeed happen. But every single logical takeaway from what we're seeing points in that direction. Now, takeaway 2 is going to lead me back to the fully guaranteed money and Brandon Ayuk's contract. So we saw Deshaun Watson in the fully guaranteed money. Lawrence is now number 3. Watson number 1 at $230 million. You see how much comically higher Deshaun Watson's number is than everybody else's? Well, it reminds me a lot of what I talked about with Justin Jefferson. He's at $88.7 million fully guaranteed amongst receivers with the deal that he signed last week. So Jefferson's number 1. Second is Tyreek Hill at $52.5 million. Massive, massive gap. So it goes Watson down to Burrow, $230 million to $146.5 million. It's a similar type of gap, just out of nowhere, as we saw Justin Jefferson make in the receiver market. And my argument right after Jefferson signed his deal last week was that the league didn't have to cave to Jefferson's number as precedent for the next receivers who are going to earn contracts. It's Brandon Ayuk, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase. The league could just stick with the rest of the pack and not the outlier at number 1. They could treat Jefferson's contract as an outlier because nobody said that they had to treat it any differently. As you can see in the quarterback market, everybody is looking at the contracts not named Deshaun Watson's contract, and they're building precedent off of those. not off the outlier at 230 million. So Lawrence just came in at 142, slightly behind Burrow, ahead of Lamar Jackson, ahead of Justin Herbert. And I think that you could project the same thing to happen in the wide receiver market, which is good news for the 49ers, which is good news for the Bengals and Jamar Chase, which is good news for the Cowboys and CeeDee Lamb. I think the numbers are going to be closer to 52 million, 52.5 fully guaranteed money, which is what Tyreek Hill was at. So don't get obsessed with APY, because the APY is just this general indicator. It could even be a vanity number at times. Nobody really cares about APY when push comes to shove, unless a receiver wants that vanity number on his contract. But in that case, you're a team, you can easily satisfy the vanity number by tacking on money that's not guaranteed onto the end of the deal, that's unlikely to be earned. So it doesn't really make a difference in terms of long-term pay and long-term salary cap compliance. It's about the fully guaranteed money. That's how you measure a deal. And through this quarterback deal for Trevor Lawrence, I think that we've learned that top-level outliers are not going to set precedent in the NFL. In the quarterback market, that belonged to Deshaun Watson. In the receiver market, that belongs to Justin Jefferson. So that's how Trevor Lawrence's mega deal affects the 49ers and Brock Purdy. Purdy is still on track to be paid big time money, $60 million a year potentially. But I just have to remind everybody that this year, that's such a leverage hinge point. It's Purdy has to play well. He has to continue doing what he's doing. And we've gotten every single indication that he will, but it has to happen on the field. 49ers have to continue playing well. And everything that I say comes with a caveat of, if they continue on their current trajectory, things will end up good for this football team, and they'll end up good for Brock Purdy. And guess what? The 49ers have the money to pay it too. They've managed the cap really well. We might see the first quadruple bonus structure for Brock Purdy if his contract is indeed this big. All right, we're moving to a 49ers Q&A. Let's talk. Go for Broke thinks that Purdy will be better this season. I think a lot of people think that within the 49ers organization. I mean, he's got a year and a half under his belt of starting experience, 2 years under his belt being in an NFL building. He's got his first full offseason now under his belt. He's been healthy this year. He looks physically stronger than he was last season. 49ers are returning all of their weapons, and they're hoping to make the offensive line better. I always come back to this when I talk about Brock Purdy. If he was already this damn good with this bad of an offensive line, if they could just move this dot over to the right with a better grade in pass protection, you could see that moves to the right are correlated with moves up in efficiency. And if that happens, then Brock Purdy will be at stratospheric levels in terms of efficiency. I like you, Go for Broke. And here he is. A lot of your videos echo my own thoughts so clearly. There are far too many people who make assumptions and statements that are underinformed, misinformed, or just purely false. Yes. And one of the ones that I had heard the most was that Trevor Lawrence is better than Brock Purdy, with absolutely no evidence to back that up. No, again, evidence is not where somebody was drafted. The draft is a guess. We find out after the draft how good these players are. So we found out over the past couple of years that Purdy's a better quarterback than Trevor Lawrence. Is he as tall as Lawrence? No. Can he bench as much as Trevor Lawrence? No. Is this a world's strongest man competition? No. Is this a height competition? No. This is a quarterback competition. We're seeing who's the best at playing quarterback, which is one of those things that's a little bit harder to measure. It's harder to quantify. But we can quantify the performance. And so far, the performance of Purdy has been absolutely exemplary, as we show here. I mean, I could highlight Mahomes. I could highlight Goff. He's been in the top 10 over the past 2 years. Burrow's been 10th. There's Jordan Love. Purdy also better than him. Lawrence down here at number 15. So you just have to look at objective numbers. And, you know, watching the tape will tell you the same thing. Watching the tape will tell you that Purdy's more accurate than Trevor Lawrence. Watching the tape will tell you he might be faster than Trevor Lawrence. I'm not talking about over 40 yards, but I'm talking about in terms of quick movement to get away from rushers in the pocket. There's one area that Lawrence, I think, is formidable in. It's got a really, really strong frame. So it might be hard to drag him down. But Purdy has one of the strongest bases in the game. And maybe, just maybe, through the fact that he isn't as tall, he is harder to bring down than a tall quarterback with a higher center of gravity than Trevor Lawrence. The sack rate agrees with me. The pressure to sack rate agrees with me. The tape agrees with me. So, yeah, all these assumptions that are so tied to just groupthink and draft status, they're not going to be reflected in the money here. And the money here is going to show us when it comes to next season, if Brock Purdy continues at his current trajectory, he's on track for that 60 million APY. In regards to the Madden cover, the 49ers played the Raiders in week 16 of the 2022 season. Yeah, but that's not on the Madden cover. The Madden cover is Christian McCaffrey wearing a red jersey. The 49ers played the Raiders in week 17 of 2022 in Las Vegas, and they wore their white jerseys, the Niners did, and the Raiders were in their black jerseys. The cover of the Madden 2025 video game has the inverse. It has the 49ers in red and the Raiders in white. So it's obviously some sort of Photoshop. That picture didn't come from that 49ers Raiders game. Hammer that like button. Hell yeah. Purdy knows the game on an instinctual level. And yeah, he definitely isn't the fastest if you put him up in a 40-yard dash, but he moves in those short spaces as good as anybody in the league. I mean, the quickness of Brock Purdy within the pocket, and I think you combine that with his instincts and with his study habits, because that means he could start sensing things on his periphery. He's also got really good peripheral vision. I'll have some more on that. I've got some more Brock Purdy intel that I've got to share with you. But the peripheral vision that he has allows him to get that first step quicker. And with that quicker first step, he looks faster on the field. But that's part of being a football player. Being a football player is not just how fast you can run in a straight line. It's how fast you can run when there are bodies flying at you, when there are defensive linemen trying to remove your head. And then being able to do all that and still scan the field and hit a guy downfield. There's somebody who put that video up, 8 minutes of Brock Purdy being annoying. It's hilarious because you see him being like Russell Wilson was in his prime, running around outside the pocket. I know that Brian Griese and the 49ers don't want Purdy to be going off schedule all the time, but he goes off schedule when he needs to. That's what the 49ers want. That's what they're shooting for, is for Purdy to only go off schedule when the situation necessitates it. And I think that it's been necessitated with the fact that the 49ers offensive line hasn't been great, and Purdy has taken his opportunities and used them well. This illustrates a lot of that at play. I mean, he's been obviously really good from structure, from the pocket, when the pocket hasn't broken down. But to get this high of an efficiency score, you also have to be performing when you're moving out of the pocket, when the play is breaking down. And that's what Brock Purdy has done. Kevin Allen says it right now. Purdy navigated the pocket masterfully. Very good for a first-year starter. This is a good one. The very first time you saw Purdy play in a preseason in 2022, you reminded you a lot of Russell Wilson. But now you see differences in their game. Purdy's better from the pocket than Russell Wilson was. That's, I think, hurt Russell Wilson over the course of his career, is that he has actually struggled from the pocket to see receivers over the middle of the field. And as his athleticism has lost an edge as he's gotten older, he hasn't been quite as good on off-schedule stuff. So Purdy is like a good combination of what Russell Wilson brought to the table as far as scrambling around, but he also is really good from the pocket. And I think the 49ers believe he can get better and better from the pocket, which is why if he continues at the current trajectory, in about a year, he might be lined up to be that $60 million man. But the data does not lie. And I mean, this is what I have to hammer home to finish this out. We can go to the data and we could see the composite of the efficiency and the accuracy downfield. And Purdy is way up there, head and shoulders above the rest of the league. And the argument that that has an unbeatable supporting cast just does not hold water, because we just look at where his pass protection was and he's over on the left side. He's not over on the right like the quarterbacks with the best pass protection. He's way over here on the left. And yes, the 49ers are trying to improve that pass protection. It has been a point of emphasis for them. I talked about Dominic Pooney. I've got an article about Dominic Pooney. I could even share that article as I sign off here. Go back to the Athletic. It just came out today. I talked to Lance Leopold, the coach at Kansas, who actually faced Puni back when Puni was with the Jayhawks, but faced Brock Purdy back when Purdy was with Iowa State, the Cyclones. Obviously, Puni was later with the Jayhawks. So this article, this interview with Lance Leopold, I think covers everything that needs to be covered. All right, that's how the Trevor Lawrence contract affects Brock Purdy and the 49ers. 49ers and Purdy, well, they're going to keep on aiming forward. They continue at this trajectory. Brock Purdy's going to make a whole lot of money because he is better than Trevor Lawrence. Actual results matter in the NFL. Remember that. Remember, there's going to be so much gibberish about potential here, potential that. No, actual results matter, especially when it comes to quarterbacks getting paid. When players get paid, it is a meritocracy in many of those ways. And Brock Purdy's on track to make a whole lot of money because of it.